Welcome to the Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share that passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. Welcome to Season 9, where we will talk about reflecting on personal stories and letting our brilliance shine. I'm so excited to share these powerful conversations. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hey, today I'm talking with Alicia, a Latina entrepreneur and founder of San Maris Botanicx. San Maris is a matriarchal owned candle brand redefining elegance with the finest fragrance, oils, and wax. Breaking away from conventional Botanica candles, they craft clean and sacred aromas that embody the rich stories of Latin America. From oral traditions to captivating scents, each candle encapsulates the essence of our heritage and Mother Earth, offering a sensory, immersive experience. Let's get into the conversation. I am so excited to talk with Alicia today. This has been a long time coming, and I appreciate her reaching out to me to be on the podcast. And I'm excited to get into your story. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Alicia Campbell. It's so funny, the last name. But I am the founder of San Maris, which is a candle line primarily that I had started in 2016. So, here we are.
Yeah. So what brought you to the space of designing your candle line?
Yeah, so basically I have such a background. So I guess I'll start. I'm such a generalist. I am a jack of all trades, so I kind of dabble in everything, but I used to play bass guitar in a band for about 15 years. We were signed to RCA. We were an indie rock band. I, traveled everywhere, toured, did everything. And while I was doing that, in order to make income, I started doing makeup and hair for other friends that were in bands. And I kind of fell into the realm of celebrity hair and makeup. So I did that for a very long time. Ended up moving to New York when the band split up, and I signed to an agency in New York City. I was living there for a while. And how do I put this? I'm Dominican. I grew up in California, which was really rare in the 80s to be a Dominican in California. So when I went to New York, I really tapped into my roots. I was like, oh my God, everybody sounds like my mother. I get it now. Like, my parents are New Yorkers. They're not Californians. Like, everything just kind of made sense. In that, so I really tapped into my culture. And one day I was on set doing hair and makeup, and I'm like, I love doing hair and makeup, but I want something that's mine. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do something that represents me as a person. And I started kind of tapping into my roots and like really learning my Dominican heritage and the food and the smells and going to the bodegas and the botanicas, and everything just kind of made sense from my childhood, which it never did in California. There was no connection. And that's basically kind of how I started the brand. Originally, it was called Santos, and it was going to be a skincare line because I was a makeup artist, and I went to herbalist school. I got certified as an herbalist, and I realized I fell in love with scent and aroma more than actual ingredients that are going to like enhance the skin. That was so boring to me. I was like, no, I like the scent of stuff. So then I ended up moving back to California during the pandemic, and I started taking classes with Art of Olfaction in LA, but I was doing online courses because it was COVID. And I started blending myself and kind of playing around with different fragrances. And one of them just hit me, and it was so nostalgic. And it reminded me of my mother doing spiritual limpias on people in the garage, and I was like, this is it. That's the brand. Like, it just triggered a memory. And I just love the fact that scent can trigger memories and be nostalgic. And it also reminded me of writing music. So it kind of hit those, my old musician days where, I would write songs. It's the same. It's a different medium, but you're working with, bass notes, middle notes, top notes. And it just, to me in my head, I'm like drums, bass, guitar, singer, like it just kind of layers that way. So I just fell in love, and I'm like, I want to be a perfumer. I don't consider myself a perfumer or master perfumer to say. I've only been doing this for about 5 years now, actually, in the perfume world element of things, but I definitely love it. I admire it. I'm getting better at blending. I know that, just from practicing and working. And I started in the candle space now because I wanted to take the traditional, 7-day candle and make something more modern and contemporary and something more beautiful for the altar or for your sacred space or whatever it may be, and something with fragrance, because they don't have fragrance. I'm like, I want to spice things up on the altar. So that's kind of how I came about things.
It's so interesting that you connected the sense to music and how it's all layered. And I've never thought of it like that. But you're right. Like, all of our senses are connected. And even like music can be nostalgic and trigger memories. And
Mm-hmm.
like, my mind is just blown because I've never connected sense like that, and how you create music. Like, that is
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was a self-taught bass player in my band. I've always been like, I'm going to learn how to do things myself, and the same came with like making fragrance. Like, I was like, I'm going to learn this. I'm passionate. I'm going to make it happen. And yeah, it was almost like second nature, because I think of being a musician or coming from a musician, background. I think it just clicked. Like, whereas when I was trying to do skincare, it didn't resonate with me at all, because I like to do makeup. That's like art to me, it's like I have a blank canvas. I could do, the makeup and stuff, but the formulation process, I was like, this is so not me. Like, I am visual, I'm creative, I love color, I love, just things like that. Um, and the same with fragrance. Like, I don't know what the word is for it, but like when I smell scents, I think of colors. I'm so visual, there's like all these, they're just kind of all connected to me, in a way. So, yeah, it's been really fun.
It's always exciting to hear about the process and the journey that has gotten you to where you are. And it's almost like, I don't know, it's satisfying to, like, when it just clicks, and when
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, I am taking all of these experiences and building upon them to get to my passion.
Hmm.
And so that
Yeah.
is really exciting. I am curious, and maybe this is just me being chismosa, but when you were a makeup artist, like, were
Yeah.
there any famous people that you did makeup or hair for?
Yeah. I mean, most of my clientele was, one of my bigger clients that I worked with more frequently, being from the San Francisco Bay Area, was Metallica, the band. I've worked with Green Day. I've worked with My Chemical Romance. So a lot of bands, um, because that was my world, and I kind of fell into doing men because it's very men driven, that whole world. But living in New York, yeah, I did more rappers in New York. So I worked with like, you know, uh, Big Sean and Yeezy, and just a lot of different, it's still in the musician category. So, but yeah, I've worked with comedians. I've worked with God, Neil deGrasse Tyson, like just like you can name it. The range.
That is so cool.
Yeah. It was really fun. It's a lot of work. Like people always, ask like, "Oh my God, you have the funnest job in the world. You just get to do makeup on people." And I'm like, it's actually really hard because you have to like, you have a kid, you're running around. My suitcase is 80 pounds, running up and down stairs, and there's a lot of like waiting time, standing time. And it's very it's exhausting. It's their long days, and they're flying everywhere and traveling and kind of never home and stuff like that. So it's been very interesting.
I mean, coming from the wedding industry myself, I know how much work goes into making
Yeah.
sure everyone is looking flawless, and the early mornings and the hectic schedules.
Mhm.
So I give you lots of props. And
Thank
also, like,
you.
I understand that it can be so tiring and so draining, which is like
Yes.
makes sense to want to do something a little bit more chill.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like with age and obviously during the pandemic, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So that's been kind of an interesting, you know, kind of rock thrown into my world of doing things, and that has not allowed me to do my job the way I would want to do my job. So having San Maris as my primary thing right now has been just so amazing, and I put my whole heart into it because it's the one thing that's mine, and it's there, and having a chronic illness, which is really difficult to deal with in the first place. I feel like, especially around the workplace, in a situation like that, it's like, I'm a liability. Oh, let's not hire her because she could be sick and like not be able to make it on set and things like that. So that's been a big challenge, for that aspect of my career. And I just put it on hold right now. For a while, I was doing more e-com fashion stuff, because that's in studio, and it's just, you go to one place. So living in San Francisco, again, we have Gap and, a lot of big brands like that, like Old Navy, Banana Republic. So I was doing a lot of stuff on set for them until I got really ill and was not able to just like not even show up anymore. I was like, let me just put this on pause. I got to heal. And my main focus has been San Maris, just trying to build the brand, building a team, things like that. So I'm ready to be an entrepreneur and boss people around. I don't want to be bossed around anymore. I'm just kidding.
I'd love to hear about the transition of stepping into um, the candle industry. I know that it's
Yeah.
um, like you said, you were starting to develop this before the pandemic, right?
Yes.
And so then during the pandemic, when you decided to like stop working,
Hmm.
how is that transition? And like what prompted the final push? Like I guess I'm just always interested in like the nitty-gritty of
Okay.
like how did it happen? How did you do it? What were your motivations?
Yeah, actually, it's okay. Um, so in 2020, I had moved from New York to Nashville because obviously I had a lot of clientele in Nashville. A lot of musicians live there. My partner's a musician as well, so we went there for a little bit, and then the pandemic hit, and we ended up moving back to the Bay Area. I got really ill, um, put on medications, and I started to get better. And at this time, nobody was working, the world wasn't working, so I was just taking online courses, for the, and just doing my thing and testing candles and wicks and learning how to be a chandelier, they call it, which is like weird, a chandelier. And then I started doing work again, makeup, when things started opening up again. And I got really ill again, and I ended up in the ER with sepsis. And I had to be in the hospital, or I was in the hospital for 4 weeks. I launched the brand from the hospital bed with my computer. I did like all the website, like I built the website, everything, because I was just sitting in the hospital, so I actually launched the brand there. And it was weird. There was like a weird period for me, I think, dealing with my health, going, oh my God, is this the end? You know what I mean? And on top of that, like the transition, I was so used to just being in this makeup world and like getting up and being on set, like kind of losing that. I feel like there was like a lot of loss and grief that had happened, amongst all of that. Losing myself, my vision, my image, because I've gained weight, being on medications, and just there was like a lot that went around with it. It was kind of like a very big mental struggle. But I've learned to be grateful every day when I wake up, and I think it's those times that you're at the worst that you really realize how resilient and strong the body is. And now it's like I wake up and every morning when I'm taking my dog for a walk, I like whatever's out there, I'm like, thank you for letting me breathe one more day. Like, and you just learn to appreciate life. And I feel like everybody at some point goes through this in some way, you just learn to kind of roll and flow with it. And it took me a couple times of going back on set, realizing like, okay, my body's not allowing me to do this anymore. I need to focus. I need to heal. I need to surrender and just do what I need to do in order to be present every day. So it was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like it just kind of happened. And there was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of struggles. I've never dealt with depression in my life, and that was the first time that I ever have, and had to get on medication and things like that. But I've pulled out of it, and I'm definitely in a better place. I'm currently on a clinical trial, which has been amazing, and I think I'm getting results. I mean, I've tried every medicine book for the last 3 years, but this has been amazing, and I hope it helps other people too. That's why I did it, because I tried to remind myself, like, the medicines I've taken, someone was in my position doing a clinical trial. So why not help future people that are suffering like me? Because it's hard dealing with a chronic illness and trying to run a business and stuff like that. It's been a lot of things thrown at me, but spiritually, I feel like I've wakened up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I always like appreciate hearing um the growth that happens during a really hard time. And I appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing your
Yeah.
experience. And I'm glad that you're okay and that you are moving forward with
Yeah.
gratitude and joy. I I mean, running a business is not that easy,
It's not.
but like I appreciate the flexibility that it gives me in the like more of a time freedom to choose when I'm working, when I'm not working, when I can be with my kids, when I need to
Exactly.
shift things around in my schedule.
Mhm.
So, like, entrepreneurship is a lot of work. It's very
Yeah.
hard. It's mentally draining, but I I'm always just like rooting for people because I know that it can really be beneficial for people who have um more of a desire to have a flexible schedule as opposed to
Yeah.
like a 9 to 5 or even like needing to be at a specific work location for
Hmm.
extended period of time. So thank you for sharing that story. I'd love to hear more about your actual line of products.
Yeah, yes, of course. So I actually started with two candles when I started, and basically the whole idea behind the brand is my mom's a Santeria priestess, and she, I grew up with it. I grew up with going to my mom has botanicas, my abuela had botanicas. Like I grew up with it around me. I never was particularly very involved in it. Like they say, I'm Americana. So, it's like that thing. But when I started creating the scents, it really was nostalgic, brought me back to my childhood, brought me back to my mother. And I wanted to create something that, you know, was more beautiful in the Botanica or in just on a regular retail store shelf or indie, store or whatever, that represented these, I guess, I don't want to say these orichas that she would work with. And because I just started doing the deep dive in the history and reading about how that came to the Caribbean or Brazil and all these places. And I learned so much about history and how it came from like Africa. And it was just so intriguing and interesting to me. And there's always been this dark context around it and scary, and I'm like, I never knew it like that. I've always known it to be very beautiful, and like my mother's always helped people. She's never done anything hurtful or anything like that. It was always to like help with love or just talk to people. She's basically a counselor, and I was like, I want to show the beauty of that. I want to show how like light and bright all that is. Not that my whole line is going to be based around that, but the first collection that I did, I wanted it to represent my mother, my Dominican heritage, what I grew up with, my abuela, like all of that. And obviously in the future, I'm going to branch out and do other different collections and things like that. Maybe we'll take a visit to Mexico, or something. But I just, and I wanted to use Latin, like Latino hierbas and stuff because I love French perfume. I love all that, but it's always been so French driven. Like everything comes from France or Italy. I'm like, but there's so many beautiful things in Brazil, Cuba, so I really wanted to showcase that and bring those things out, and Palo Santo. I mean, there's just so many, like, and that's just like one thing. And I'm like, how many beautiful herbs and scents come from Copal, that it's just, these are barely hitting the scene now, that people are starting to become aware of these things. So that's kind of how the whole branding came about. So I started with two candles, Los Dos Aguas, which one represents Yemaja, which I named the candle Madre de Aguas, the goddess of the ocean. And the second candle I came out with was Ochun, which is Amo, which is, she's the goddess of love, and she's the river, so the ocean and the river. My zodiac sign's Cancer, so I'm very water. I go with the flow,
Mine is
so
too.
I'm like, I gotta start with the waters. Are you a Cancer too?
Yes.
Wait, when's your birthday?
July 20th.
I'm June 27th. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm like,
amazing.
I'm right at the end of Cancer.
I love that. Oh my God, I love meeting another Cancerian.
Yes, and my daughter is a Pisces, so we got lots of water signs.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, so I took that element and I named the company San Maris. So Maris is ocean in Latin. And I used San because originally I was going to name the company Santos. And I wanted to give it some sort of like element to that. And then I was talking to my partner one day and I was like, what if I name it instead of Santa, which is like the female form of saint, right? San is the masculine form. I was like, what if I named it San Maris? And he's like, That's kind of cool because we grew up in the Bay Area and everything is like San Francisco, San Jose. And I was like, oh my God. So it like kind of correlates with like where we grew up too, you know? So that's why I ended up calling it San Maris. So it's basically Saint Ocean. So it's the kind of represents the first candle, Madre de Aguas, and I tried to use all the like ocean elements and seashells and in the branding and stuff like that. So those were the two first candles that I launched, and I'm gonna do the 7 potencias, which are the 7, orichas that usually my mom works with. So the next two that came out was for Elegua, which is Caminos, the road opener. So that candle is to open up paths, opportunity, abundance, stuff like that. And then there's Oya, which is the she's like the warrior, the head of the, I don't want to say cemetery, but really, she's fuerte, and she's my mom's santo that she was blessed in, so I wanted to make sure that I added her in there. That was a really fun candle to make. That was my favorite. So that actually is represents a trip to New Orleans that I did with a fashion company. We shot in New Orleans, and when I was there, I really wanted to kind of see the voodoo elements and the Marie Laveau and all that stuff, because you're in New Orleans, right? And so that candle is actually really dark, mysterious fruits like figs and plums and everything like that. And I use Spanish moss and amarice. So it's actually like kind of a nod to New Orleans. That's my favorite one. And I've been sold out. So for weeks, but yeah, so that's kind of how I decided to pick to do the candles. They all the scents that I create for each candle is an offering to the Oricha. So instead of just putting like a regular, 7-day vela on your altar with a bunch of fruit and stuff like that, it's all in the candle. So all the offerings are in the scent part of it. So I wanted to kind of clean it up, but then you still could fill your space with what you would offer the Orichas.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love hearing the stories behind the brands and the actual products. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube, you should go check out the YouTube. You can see, is it your studio that you're in?
Yes. Yeah, this is my studio I'm in, yes.
Yes. And it looks beautiful. I really love the branding. And so if you're watching online, I do have a candle, and you sent the Oshun.
Oshun, yes.
Yes. And can you explain like how you went about designing the branding? Because
100%.
it's if you're watching online, I'm unboxing the candle. So if you hear the tissue paper, that's what's going on. But I really am like a sucker for packaging and branding, and so the tissue paper even has like, it looks like an eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Ojo por ojo.
yeah, yeah, and like from the box to the tissue paper to the actual candle, like the branding is so sleek and clean and crisp. It's black and white. So I'd love to know like the process behind this imagery.
Yes, of course. So with the box and the logo, I found a really old LP record from the 30s of it was a Cuban Haitian Santeria record, and it said Santeria on it, and I actually had a friend draw the san part from the Santeria to take it out, And then we created the Maris to look like the other end, because I think it said like Africana or something. We took it so it had that feel. And the record was in black and white, and it kind of had that black stripe that goes across the top. So we pulled that from the LP as well. So the box is really inspired by an old 1930s Cuban record, which I've been trying to get a hold of. I can't find an actual one. I've only found it on like online and in Santeria stores or whatever. As far as the tissue paper goes, it was actually a drawing my mother did.
Oh
Can
my
you see it?
gosh. Yes. That is
So my mom.
okay. So I'm going to hold up the tissue paper
Yeah.
next to the drawing. Oh my goodness. That's so cool.
Yeah. So it was funny because my mother, she, just paints when she feels like it, or she'll say, the spiritos told me to paint. And one day she sent me a picture of her altar, because I was like, can you send me a picture of your altar? I need inspiration. And this was sitting in the background. I was like, what is that? She's like, oh, that was just some painting I did. I'm like, bring that. That's going to be my tissue paper. That's my logo, So that's kind of how that fell into place. As far as the candle goes, I chose white vessels because in Yoruba culture in Santeria, when you get initiated, and this is, it's a very private practice, but I wanted to honor that when you get initiated, you wear white for a year. And it kind of means ache, and it's like purity and cleansing. It's kind of like a rebirth, like you're reborn once you get initiated into Santeria. So that's why with the core collection, I went with white vessels. And just kept it really clean and chic and bright, and nothing dark or anything like that. So that's kind of the background of the packaging and the logo and stuff like that.
It's so good. It's so intentional. And
Yes.
I love that. Like it just makes the brand and the product like so much more meaningful. And so thank you for
Yes.
sharing.
Thank you.
I'm curious what your mom thinks about all that you've created.
Oh my God, she's always laughing because I'm like, Mom, you're my artista, She's like, she laughs. She goes, oh no, it's not. And it's really interesting because when going back to when I lived in Nashville and I ended up getting sick and having to be here, it was almost like I needed to be here because I really needed her influence on the brand. This core collection is her, it's inspired by her, and everything comes from her. So when I moved back to California, she's helped me put some of the oils together, like, for Yemaja, you need to have melon. We give her white flowers, the ocean. So those are the scents in that candle, and for every candle. So she's helped me formulate. I'm in the process right now. I'm redoing my body care portion because I was hand making soaps in studio in small batches, and we're redoing it, and I'm teaching my brother how to do it now because I want to have my brother on board because I'm keeping it very, family oriented. I mean, it's all about them, right? And it just it just feels right to have it be like to be kept within the family, so building a team and just all that stuff. And there's so many exciting things we're working on right now for the future. And yeah, it's been so fun, but she's been proud. She's excited. She tries not to show it, but I could tell deep down inside that she is, because it's all her, she's all over it.
Yeah. So that brings me to ask, how are you working on healing yourself in order to pour into the next generation? It seems like
Yeah.
there's just so much, so many layers to what you've gone through and how you are reconnecting with your cultural roots in order
Yes.
to continue what your cultural legacy is. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear, like, from your perspective.
Yeah, 100%. So, I feel like with every culture, every upbringing, there's always, generational stuff. And I think, in my family, there, there's a lot of differences, with I don't want to call this religion, because this is, to me, is not religion. It's more of a practice, a spiritual practice. But I think there's always like those differences and stuff, which I'm all for everybody, and I'm like, if that's what helps you lead your way, it's find your faith and whatever it may be. But the healing process, it's been very interesting working with my mother. I've seen my mother and my grandma, have botanicas. My mom never being 100% successful in them. I don't know if it's because she's a Latina woman, or if it may be like the area we were in, because people didn't understand that. And just trying to like bring the Latin, like why can't we be like everybody else, right? Like, why can't we fit into these categories as small businesses? I mean, I've seen a lot of beautiful Latin candle brands. I've never seen anything for the Caribbean yet. So just kind of making a mark, pioneering something beautiful, opening the doors for other Caribbean creators to step foot and speak about these kind of things. I also, this, like I said earlier, it has always had a dark shadow upon it, especially with Santeria and stuff. Everybody's all scared, like, ooh, voodoo, voodoo. And I'm like, to me, it's just another practice. It's just come from a different region. You just don't understand it. And I want to educate, so people understand and kind of heal those old like metaphors around the whole idea of it, and just show these things. Like, this thing is not scary. It's actually something really beautiful, and you just don't understand, and you just got to educate and teach yourself. So that's been one of my number one priorities, is education. And putting my mom on the pedestal. I've seen her struggle and hustle, like going to flea markets, doing readings on the street. And I'm like, no, girl, we're changing all of that. Like, I don't want you to suffer anymore and try to, like, and just hustle. Let me do that work now. And let me keep, bringing in. That's why I'm going to pass it to my younger brother and teach him how to do things so he could teach his kids, So that's kind of my main goal in the healing process, is just, why can't there be successful entrepreneurs in our space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have you navigated those microaggressive comments or biases when it comes to what you do?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I didn't really get many, and more recently I've been getting like little hidden DMs in my Instagram. But it's one thing. I respect everyone's opinion, I respect everyone's outlook, I guess, on their space. And I do know, as a creator, not everybody's gonna like what I do. The same one with music. I knew, like when we signed to a record label, they said, hey, you're gonna have bad write-ups. People are not gonna like your music. People will love your music. It's not gonna be for everybody. And I learned to take constructive criticism very easily, and just kind of work and see how I can make it better, I mean, I don't get angry or anything like that. I take it as a learning tool. So,
Yeah, maybe that's the cancer in us, because I'm the same way. Like, I
yeah,
don't typically get offended easily. I just, like you, want to just educate people.
yeah,
And I think, like, oh, I think that's just like the misconception, the preconditioned ideas that people have heard or come to
yes,
believe. And so let's do some re-education and bring light
exactly.
to whatever we're
To
about.
the topic or whatever. Yeah. And that was one thing, I've spoken to people that work in the retail space and PR, because, being makeup artists, I have a lot of friends that do PR for brands and stuff like that. And, I've had people tell me like, hey, I don't know, like spiritual stuff doesn't really do well. Like nobody's going to pick you up. Nobody's going to pick you up in Nordstrom's. Nobody's going to pick you up here. And I'm like, you know what? If that's not where we're supposed to be, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like this is one collection. It's not defining my whole brand. You know, it's one collection I came up to honor my, you know, Dominican heritage and my mother. If they don't want to pick up this collection, that's okay. You know, the next one might be what they pick up, but I'm not going to stress about it and worry that it's not going to pick it up. I mean, one thing, being sick and everything, I've learned to not put the pressure on me. I kind of go with ebb and flow now, and I let things kind of happen when they're supposed to happen. And I'm like, you know what? If it's a good fit, we will be there. If it's not, we won't. And that's okay. I'm okay with that, you know? So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing as an artist, you know, or a creator or any, whatever you want to call me, you know? So I'm just going with it. Like, you can like it or not.
Yeah, I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like if we believe something and we have passion, like we just keep going. And even if
Yeah.
we get no's or negative comments, like you just keep going because you
Yeah.
believe in what you're doing. And I wish that people could smell the candle because it smells so good. I want you to share where people can find your
Yeah.
products.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're online right now. We are at it's San Maris Botanica, but I use an X instead of an A at the end. That's kind of a nod to Brazil. So I wanted to kind of implement all the regions, you know, to like, and especially the regions that, you know, this is very sacred to them. So, I did do that just to kind of change it up, and it's my weird mind, you know. um, and you could get it on Instagram. You could get it on the website. We are in a few retailers here in California. And I'm looking to branch out right now. I've been working on New York because I think New York, Miami are going to be big hubs for me. And Chicago. I love Chicago, by the way. So those are the next major cities I'm working on. But yeah, as of right now, everything is mostly online for the time being. And I just been working on wholesalers. We will be at a trade show next month. So I'm hoping that also brings in new retailers and so forth.
Well, if you're up for traveling to Chicago, like I'm sure that there are many pop-ups that would be willing to host you and
Yeah.
get your name out in Chicago, in the Midwest area.
I love Chicago. It's one of my favorites. One of my favorites. I have traveling in a band, you know, like going across back and forth in the States. I've been to every small town, major city, and Seattle, Chicago, and Santa Fe, New Mexico have to be my top three. For me, they just like really, the food in Chicago is amazing.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. I cannot leave Chicago. Like I'll go visit other places, I
Yeah.
will travel, but this is my home.
It's home.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And that's kind of how the Bay Area was for me. Like I grew up here, my family's here. So even though I went and did my exploration and moved to Brooklyn and lived in Nashville, and my parents are from Brooklyn. Like my dad was born and raised in Bay Ridge. So it was, you know, just funny to be on the same train that I heard stories about as a kid. And it finally, like, everything just clicked, you know, I'm like, oh man, I'm in Brooklyn, you know? But I did all that and I'm back home, you know, this is home for me. And yeah, same. I love that. I'm actually in Oakland. So Oakland's like Brooklyn to San Francisco. A lot. It's a nice cultural diversity here. I love that. I love the melting pot.
Yeah, I visited San Francisco, I think it was February of 2020 before
Okay.
everything got shut down.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I have to go back because I did enjoy it. I did enjoy my time there.
Yeah. It's a beautiful city. It's unfortunately we've been having a lot of crime, but I feel like that's been kind of in a lot of places right now, especially throughout California. But other than that, I mean, the weather's gorgeous and it's pretty, but Chicago,
Yeah.
such a good city.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I always like to ask my guests, what encouragement or advice would you have for the next generation?
Yeah. Um, man, I've been really, as I've gotten older now, since I'm entering my abuelita era. I know that's a TikTok, thing. And it's funny because I have a younger sister. She's 21. So I feel like so old compared to her when I'm not. But I really can't stress more. I just keep talking about education and just learning and constantly learning and putting yourself out there. Like just putting yourself out there. Don't let things hold you back. I mean, we only live once. It's enjoy your life. Just do it, because how would you ever know? And I really want to see, the Latinas and the Latinos or Latinx. I want to see them on the forefront. I feel like we've kind of been in the shadow a little bit, especially amongst the American culture. And I think it's our time now. I really do. So just do the things you want to do. Put yourself on TikTok. Put yourself on Instagram. I mean, what do we got to lose, right? Everybody else is doing it. So, and that's a lot for me to say, because it's taken me a lot to even show up today. Like I've been so shy and kind of hidden because of everything I've been dealing with mentally and health wise, that it's, I've come to a point where I'm like, you know what? I just need to share my story and be out there, because I'm not the only one going through this. So huge advice, like just throw yourself out there for sure.
I agree 100%. And that's why I love this podcast, because I feel like it connects us. When we share
Yeah.
our stories, we realize that, like, oh, we're not alone in going through this. And it gives
Hmm.
us that much more confidence to go after our dreams, to do the
Yeah.
thing, to put yourself out there, to get back up when things don't go the way that we had planned. So I
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that. Anything
Of
that we
course.
can look forward to for the rest of the year? I know that, like, the holidays are huge for buying
Yes.
gifts and gift sets
Yes.
and candles and all the things. So is there anything that you want to share or that we can look forward to?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now I have 4 candles in my lineup. There will be a 5th one for fall. And I am working on discovery sets. Those being a little tricky, but I am working on those. I actually get a lot of requests for those. Everybody's like, you have mini candles, so, that will be hoping in the holiday lineup. I am really focusing on body care for the summer. So I'm actually in the process of redoing my soap that I have right now, my jabones, and I'm working on some other exciting body care stuff. And then for 2025, we're going to start pushing to the fragrance realm. So I'm keeping it very open. So we might see a perfume soon, hopefully. Yeah, yeah, I'm so excited. It's been so much fun. It really has been, and it's been fun because it's just like I can let my creative mind go and just do what it wants to do, without no expectations or limitations on it, whereas like doing art as a musician or, as a creator or as a makeup artist, it was always like, for the people in the band. So it's like, hey, can you write this instead of that? And then with makeup, it's the same. Like, hey, we're on set. We want no makeup today. And I'm like, but I'm a makeup artist, not an esthetician, So it's like, this is me. I could just put everything I want to do creatively into it without any limitations. So it's awesome.
Oh, I love it. And I'm so excited for your growth and what we can look forward to for the rest of the year and next year. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I have really appreciated your openness and your willingness to share your story. And I look forward to hopefully meeting in person. And
Yes.
I'm speaking it into existence. So hopefully we'll get to meet in person someday.
Yes, we will. Let's do it.
All right. Well, we will talk soon, and I'll see you later.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Ache.
Bye.
Bye.
I legit wish you could smell this candle. It is so good. Make sure to follow and connect with Alicia. Okay, there'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot, post on Instagram, and tag at Elevating La Cultura, or send me a DM. You can also comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating La Cultura. We also host monthly Comadre and networking events, so if you're in Chicago, join us for one of those. All upcoming events can be found on the website elevatinglcultura.com. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.